Hello, everybody. As you're joining us, you are actually getting a behind the scenes of how Adam and I really do talk. We do talk about personal stuff, but part of it also includes us chatting about legal cases like LaMonica McIver. As you're tuning in, you can see the rolling kind of scrolling Chiron at the top. Make sure you're subscribed to Adam Klasfeld. He has an amazing Substack, All Rise News. And then somebody taught me recently, if you hit the heart on your bottom side, I can't remember which side you're on, apparently that helps us with an algorithm. Who knew, Adam, that there's an algorithm for Substack? It just goes to show it's all sorts of Skynet. It's all taking us over. We should have a whole conversation about AI because that's just some wild shit too.
True.
I'm like terrified. No, for real. I've seen someone with Chat GPT. Y'all are welcome to chime in on the chat. Some of this Chat GPT stuff is crazy. Like crazy. But I wanted to jump on with Adam because I find there's some exciting news about the rule of law. A federal judge in Chicago named Sarah Ellis, who has been adamantly defending the rule of law on behalf of all Americans. She is handling a very important case that was brought by a group of journalists, by members of the clergy, by demonstrators, protesters that have been fighting back on the illegal and unconstitutional conduct that's being perpetrated on them at the Broadview detention facility in Illinois and at other locations in Illinois, but more specifically in Chicago. It's a fantastic, very interesting lawsuit. But Adam, this federal judge said, time out. I have a temporary restraining order that's not being obeyed. So what did she order to happen?
She ordered the very face of Operation Midway Blitz in Chicago, Chief Gregory Bovino of Border Patrol. He's the face of it. He's the guy in charge of it. And she ordered him to appear in court tomorrow. He'll have to answer to his alleged violations of court orders. Folks who are watching right now might have seen photos of him tossing, like it's a softball, a tear gas canister into a crowd of protesters, an underhand toss. Apparently, it's one of two, according to court papers, times that he tossed a tear gas canister into a crowd, and she ordered him into court after seeing that photo. You had Department of Homeland Security come out and saying that, Chief Bovino was besieged by a mob of protesters. They hit him on the head with a firecracker.
What?
And so the people who sued the federal government filed a new motion showing the video and said the statement is a lie. They showed the video. The full video shows nothing of the sort. They were supposed to, to be very clear, he was under a court order saying that he is not supposed to, or anyone, no federal agents are supposed to use tear gas absent the kind of threat that would allow them to use live ammunition. It would have to be an immediate danger. They can't use less lethal weapons unless they were at imminent risk of injury or death.
And Adam, let's make it clear as to why it even got to that point, though. Let the viewers know that are tuning in why she even got to the point to have to enter that kind of order in the first place.
Because we had seen all over Chicago things like a minister getting hit with a pepper ball in the head while standing in front of an ICE facility. We'd seen tear gas being lobbed into local law enforcement, getting tear gas because federal agents are rolling into town, tossing around a canister. We'd seen the helicopter Black Hawk moment where they were rappelling down a residential building, pulling out every person from that building, including children, and detaining them outside the building. After all of that, and after journalists sued together with protesters and also clergy, they sued and they won a temporary restraining order. And no sooner had she entered this temporary restraining order, then they're getting a stream of notices of violation. I want to just read something from the how they found out that the evidence that they have that Chief Bovino was lying, saying that he got hit. They use his own media statements that after all this happened, he starts talking to Telemundo. He starts talking to NBC News. And here's what one of the things he's quoted saying. Did Judge Ellis get hit in the head by a rock like I did this morning? Maybe she needs to see what that's like before she gives an order like that. Now, you might remember, Katie, Judge Ellis started these proceedings by saying that as soon as she was assigned this case, she was getting threats. And
Yep.
here you have a top Trump law enforcement official saying, maybe she should see what it's like to get hit in the head by a rock. And he's saying that about a federal judge who's ordered him not to use excessive force. Another thing that happened that was quoted in this brief that was just filed by the plaintiffs representing journalists and protesters, they quoted him saying, I take my orders from the executive branch, suggesting disdain for this court's authority to enjoin his lawful conduct. And they link to the videos, they link to both of the interviews, they link to footage of the moment when he's lobbing the tear gas into the crowd. And they say this supposed firecracker that hit his head, there's been no evidence of it being anywhere. And they filed a number of court declarations saying it was totally peaceful at the time that he threw that tear gas into the crowd.
And listen, as these protests and demonstration have been, they've been peaceful. I interviewed a lawyer named Robert Held, Adam, from Chicago, and he actually has some internet notoriety. He's the guy who kind of did a mini moon of his tushy buns to Gregory Bovino, and then they started chasing his ass down the street. And the only reason they caught him is because he hit a fence, like he couldn't go any farther. But he was also using a bullhorn to let the protesters know what their legal rights are. And then he was also using the bullhorn to tell those federal agents, what are you asking us to do? It's not, we're not doing anything illegally. And he said to me, he's like, these are peaceful protests. It is only when federal agents are attempting to provoke and aggressively engage with
Right.
people that are there exercising their First Amendment protected free speech rights and rights to assembly, that's happening. I noted in your newsletter, which, by the way, folks, if you are not reading, you must. It is must read and must necessary reading for you. It's All Rise News. So, Adam, I read in your latest newsletter that Governor Pritzker has launched something called the Illinois Accountability Commission by way of executive order. What is Pritzker trying to achieve by way of this commission?
Well, as the title of it goes, accountability, that he was one of the first people that I noticed when the Operation Midway Blitz started happening. He said, go out there, record law enforcement, make sure that there's accountability. And we've seen it here with Chief Bovino when the fact that there's this notice of an alleged violation, the fact that he's going to have to sit for a 5-hour deposition, that happened because someone put the camera up and recorded him mid violation of the court order. So does accountability look like civil accountability? Does it look like, and here's what's going on right now, are they collecting evidence for a possible criminal case? And what we're seeing happen from Todd Blanche and Stephen Miller is threats to prosecute elected officials for saying that if federal agents violate the law, they are going to pursue criminal prosecutions. And in the view of Todd Blanche, they're saying it's the supremacy clause that local officials can't do it, and that they believe that the executive power and the federal government's power here is so absolute that to even entertain a state prosecution of a federal agent is a crime. And the folks, a lot of legal experts and people on the ground, if there is a prosecutable crime that is so extreme that it can be subject to state law enforcement. And in my newsletter, I speak to it gets even more extreme than that, Katie,
Mm,
because there's even an implication that the fact that the governor is creating a public record, and that's all this is, a public
yeah.
record of the actions of federal law enforcement, that itself could be a criminal conspiracy. spoke to a prominent First Amendment lawyer, saying that it's basic accountability, that it's a bare bones of a free society. Your ability to record federal law enforcement, your ability to have a public record, that we don't have to have masked agents who can't be identified, who can't be named under any circumstances, and can't be brought to accountability. So this is something that you see Todd Blanche announcing across the country in California, in Illinois. We had in New York City very recently a raid in Chinatown on
Yeah.
Canal Street. And it was a very shocking sight because you don't usually see federal law enforcement do conduct raids there. There's local police, but never
Yeah.
federal law enforcement doing a raid. And the after in the wake of that, you had New York Attorney General Letitia James opening a portal for people to submit uh, videos and pictures of law enforcement, basically having the public arm themselves in cooperation with local officials to stop abuses of power. And I think Exhibit A for the need for that is what's going on in Chicago.
So you mentioned a couple of minutes ago, Adam, that Gregory Bovino, even as the head of CBP, Customs Border and Protection, that he has to sit for a 5-hour deposition. Is that in the context of this ongoing civil litigation that Judge Ellis is presiding over?
Absolutely. And as a matter of fact, it was going to be a 2-hour deposition.
Oh,
Then the judge saw the underhand lob of the tear gas and honored the request to extend it. That, okay, 2 hours might not be sufficient. And Greg Bovino has a bit of a history. Earlier this year, now his full title, he's sector chief of the El Centro uh, sector in
uh-huh.
California. And so earlier this year, he
He
had
was in that
claimed
LA, he was all involved in that LA stuff, MacArthur Park, etc. He was over there doing that
absolute,
too. Yeah.
absolutely. And a couple of the things that he was notorious for there is that he conducted a raid, an immigration raid where he said dozens of criminals have been apprehended. Local press looked into it. 77 of 78 people detained had no criminal records, zero. So that was a flat out lie. Um,
Shout out to our local journalists. Okay, keep on going, Adam.
it is essential. But then there was the Posse Comitatus trial
That's
over the
right.
deployment of the troops. And the testimony there was that a major general, U.S. Army general with 33 years' experience in the armed forces, was accused by this civilian of insufficient loyalty to the United States because he questioned the need for the raid in
That's
MacArthur
right.
Park, this
Yeah.
iconic park for immigrants in the LA area. So that's the history of Greg Bovino. That's why Greg Bovino's star appears to be rising in the MAGAverse. There's DHS posted a mock movie poster of Trump, Kristi Noem, and him, as if this were some sort of Hollywood movie, posting memes about him because he is the person who always says yes to the administration. So of course he's brought into Chicago.
I think he's the true hatchet man, right? Like literally the
Mm,
hatchet man. And I kind of had a follow up question then, Adam, which is, look, and I have to, I like to temper people's expectations always. Um, um, although I am just as angry as all of you. Realistically, Adam, I don't anticipate Judge Ellis, even if she finds him in contempt of her order, throwing him in jail. So I want to be very clear to people tuning in, albeit maybe that would send the strongest message as a deterrent. I don't think that is reasonably going to happen in this instance. But also, Adam, it kind of dovetails with a conversation I've been having as of late, which is just kind of sitting in my wanted to pick your brain a little bit. I actually am now demanding pledges from congressional candidates and members of Congress that they're going to pursue accountability hearings when the Democrats resume the majority.
mm,
Because I see the groundwork being laid by people like Pritzker, Tish James, and others to start compiling the evidence to be able to use it at said accountability hearings. And we're only going to be able to do that once we're back in a position of power to be able to implement them. And I feel like Judge Ellis is one of those few trial court, district court judges, guys, that's on the lowest level of the federal court system that is trying to defend the rule of law. And part of that is hauling in somebody like Bovino, who is just egregiously violating a court order, as we've seen a lot of people do, from James Boasberg when it came to ordering those planes to be reversed to come back from CCOT, et cetera. We're seeing these blatant disregard for orders. And I feel like even federal judges are going to get to a tipping point, Adam, where they say, you know what? It was direct criminal contempt. You did it. You're out. I'm going to sit you down, put you in your timeout. That timeout might be in a jail cell for 8 hours or something, right? Who knows? What do you think's
Right.
going to happen, Adam?
Well, I think that you're right to temper expectations just because we've had the history with Boasberg. Look, Judge
Yeah.
Boasberg, earlier this year in March, we had the open defiance of his order to turn around the planes, And what happened? He issued a finding of probable cause for criminal contempt. That was basically saying it initiates a process to look into a potential criminal violation of his order that immediately gets appealed by the DOJ,
Yeah.
and the the DC Circuit
Hmm.
reverses by a 2-to-1 margin on a writ of mandamus by the two Trump appointees. So everything is going to move slowly. I would be highly surprised, though of course it is possible, that we'll see an immediate penalty tomorrow. We see that the judge is serious. The fact that this is a judge, to your point, Katie, about the braveness of this
Yeah.
judge. This is a judge who started the proceedings in this case by making a note for the record that as soon as she was assigned this case, before she ruled against Trump and the administration, that she was getting threats just by virtue of getting the case. And not only did she issue that TRO, not only did she expand that TRO to make law enforcement wear body cams. Another possible violation of her order is that will they get the body cam footage? But that she is hauling the face of this operation into court suggests to me that she is treating this with the urgency and the seriousness that it deserves. Now, whether she has the power to
Mhm.
take action strong enough to send a message is another question. But I don't think she's going to take any of this lightly.
Yeah, and Adam, I know I don't want to be having a flight of fancy here, but I do think we are getting to that point critically in our democracy, which is to avoid a true constitutional crisis, we do need our judiciary branch to flex its powers. And
Absolutely.
part of that does include the enforcement of their orders. I feel like in the absence of judges saying my orders have teeth, they're just assisting in the neutering of the judiciary, which it's not supposed to happen, right? It's supposed to be a co-equal branch of government with the executive and the legislative branch. And frankly, if Congress, more namely the Republicans, want to stand there impotently, you're too polite, Adam, for me to say what I really want to say, then that's on them. But I would expect more from my judiciary, because I don't think it's time to be polite. I think it's time to do
Right.
our job. And part of our job as lawyers is obeying the law, the rules, the norms, and institutions. And as judges, that's what they expect us to do. So when you call balls and strikes, that's your job, judges, to do that. So, I think that's important. You mentioned a few minutes ago, and for those of y'all tuning in, I can't help myself but to take advantage of the Adam Classville brilliance by asking him about one of our favorite topics, which is Kilmar, Abrego, Garcia. So if you'll humor us, we're going to take a mini detour right now from the Chicago latest. You mentioned a few minutes ago, Adam, that Todd Blanche, is against this accountability project or commission. You also mentioned that Greg Bovino stepped in it, and his statements were used in the filings that the lawyers brought on behalf of the plaintiffs in that case, and it came back to bite him in the ass. We've seen that happen with Todd Blanche when it deals with Kilmar, Abrego, Garcia. But Adam, you had some breaking news just a couple of days ago. The DOJ, the Trump DOJ, is desperate to get rid of Kilmar Abrego Garcia off of U.S. soil. We have federal judges that are trying to stop that from happening. Suddenly now Liberia is interested in taking Kilmar. What's the latest on that?
So the DOJ announced their intention to try to send Kilmar Abrego Garcia to Liberia by the end of this week, by October
Unreal.
31st. Now, I don't think that I'll put it this way. Kilmar Abrego Garcia's attorneys do not think it's going to happen for the
Mm.
same reason why they didn't think it was going to happen with Uganda, with
Eswatini, right, or
Eswatini,
something? Yeah.
Eswatini, and
Wherever.
one other nation. That all three of those said no. Liberia apparently said yes, but they have already objected to it on the grounds of Liberia would go right around and send him back to El Salvador, where a court order blocks his deportation. And another big picture thing, Katie, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, seeing what he is up against, the full force of the United States government trying to get him out of the country,
Yeah.
has openly agreed, you can send me to Costa Rica,
Costa Rica.
which you said that you would consider sending me to. Costa Rica, unlike these other places, unlike Liberia, has said we will honor your human rights and we won't send you back to El Salvador where you fear persecution. The Trump administration was asked in open court, why are you not accepting those terms? If your goal is to actually deport Kilmar Abrego Garcia from the country, here is your opportunity. He is agreeing to it. His attorneys just agreed to it in open court. Why are you not doing it? Now, they cannot say in open court, well, we are trying to punish him for not pleading guilty to these charges that we leveled against him and fighting those charges at a trial. But they have not answered that. They are just instead finding a new country that has not made any assurance that they won't send him back to a place that another court order prohibits.
Yeah, but Adam, the devil is in the details, and you noted in your reporting on All Rise News that amazing evidentiary hearing on Kilmar Abrego Garcia's motion to dismiss for vindictive prosecution, which we all can see with our own eyes. Look, I can even see it without my reading glasses, people. We can see that vindictive prosecution happening left and right for Kilmar. That's supposed to happen November 4th and 5th. A federal judge set that for a special set hearing, allowed limited discovery to happen. And of course, now suddenly, like manna from heaven, the Trump DOJ has found Liberia, and they're going to try to get him out of here before that evidentiary hearing can happen to prove that people like Todd Blanche had their fingerprints all over this vindictive prosecution.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you one thing, Katie, in terms of I am planning to be at that hearing. And I had to
Great.
make a decision because I had a plane ticket, I had the hotel, and it's a kind of
Yeah.
question of, do I need to cancel my flight in order to, or there's a possibility, the very real possibility, the Trump administration says they're trying to get Kilmar Abrego Garcia deported to Liberia by October 31st. I am so confident that they are probably going to fail in that regard. My plans are still to be in Nashville on Tuesday for the possible testimony of Todd Blanche on the witness stand. Just today, maybe an hour before we spoke, Todd Blanche had the DOJ is now fighting to quash his subpoena. We will see
Mm.
whether a judge will allow him to avoid taking the witness stand. We will see that even if he avoids testifying, does Kilmar Abrego Garcia's team now have emails showing the backstory of what Todd Blanche said on live TV on Fox, saying this investigation started because a federal judge in Maryland questioned our decision to send him to El Salvador, something that would prove the case of vindictive prosecution and potentially torpedo his case. So we will see what happens. We have seen the government threaten to deport Kilmar Abrego Garcia to an African country. I think the third one was Ghana. All three of
Yes,
them
that's
said
right.
no. There were
That's right.
legal obstacles all three of those times. This is the fourth. There's another, having attended the hearing in Maryland, I saw how very skeptical a federal judge, Judge Zinis, was,
Hmm.
that it seems that there's a very strong likelihood that she might release him from immigration detention altogether. And we'll see if she finds that there's no legal basis to send Kilmar Abrego Garcia to Liberia in light of the possibility of refoulement to El Salvador, whether she thinks that she has the power to intervene on that. But I wouldn't be surprised if that happens this week because, of course, they've threatened to deport him this week. And if not, there will be a hearing in his criminal case next Tuesday.
Listen, that's the perfect segue for me to do an unabashed pitch for y'all to follow Adam Klasfeld, to make sure you're following his Substack, All Rise News. I've had the privilege of being friends and a colleague of Adam's for, gosh, a few years now, Adam, if you can believe it. It's been that long. And I will say this. What Adam just talked about is his level of commitment. He's flying to Nashville to be in person to cover Kilmar Abrego Garcia's hearing next week, Tuesday. Why? Because not only is it newsworthy, but it is critically important to our American democracy for you as subscribers to understand what's happening firsthand, not to get it filtered through mainstream media, not to get it filtered through other people. I rely on Adam. I trust him. Not only do I trust his reporting, but the integrity of what he's doing. And so Adam is too polite to make this pitch. I'm going to do it for him. He has no freaking clue I'm doing. He knew he didn't know I was going to do this. It's also is it the 6-month anniversary, Adam, of
It
All Rise
is.
News?
It is. We just turned 6 months old. So thank you very much, Katie. I really appreciate that because when I do fly out there, it's from the support of subscribers that make it possible. And I, we have known each other's work for a very long time. I very much admire your work. We're former colleagues and current friends, and current colleagues as well. But
That's
we
right.
I wanted to thank you for that and
Of
for
course.
giving that platform and attention right now.
Of course. And so, for all of you that are tuning in, I want to say thank you for joining me and Adam. These are important updates for you guys to understand what's happening. I know you're all very busy doing all the important stuff you guys have going on in your worlds, but our world, meaning me and Adam, our world now is exclusively fighting for democracy and making sure, as I like to say, that you are empowered because knowledge is power, and you really can't beat having a resource like Adam Klasfeld on your side. So, Adam, thanks for joining me today, and I'll most certainly be following to see what ends up happening in Kilmar's case. And if there are some kind of late breaking news, let me know. We'll jump on Substack Live together and we'll get everybody caught up to speed.
That's wonderful. I'm looking forward to it, Katie.
Take care, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. It was good to see you all. Bye, Adam.
Bye bye.